flirting became the biggest part of my life in those days, and boyfriend after boyfriend, and all madly in love. They were either in love with you and you weren't, or you were in love with them and they weren't.
It's always that way.
And it went on like that until I met Cathal. The significant night that I met him was through a friend of his who had made contact with an uncle of mine living in Donegal. And when the friend came back from Donegal, he called to tell me he had met my uncle, wife and family, and how nice they were, etc. And in the course of the chat, he said to me, by the way, I have tickets for a play on the 2nd of January. Would you like to come? What's the play? Waiting for Godot. Now, Waiting for Godot was the most significant play that had come to Dublin in a long time. This was in the 50s now. Most people couldn't make head or tail of it, didn't know what it was all about, because it was a totally new format where instead of the big windy speeches that most actors have on a stage to explain what's happening, this was minimalism, if you like, with two strange characters, tramps, who we never found out how they met or why they were together, but they were sitting on a little hilly knoll on the side of a road with a bare, bleak tree behind them.
Come, take a seat, I beseech you. You'll catch pneumonia.
You really think so?
It's absolutely certain.
No doubt you are right. Thank you, dear fellow. Done it again. But I must be getting on if I'm to observe my schedule.
Time has stopped.
Don't you believe it, sir? Don't you believe it? Whatever you like, but not
And they
that.
had this
Everything
interminable
seems
conversation, and if you read through the lines, it was all about the meaning of life. But it was rendered in totally simple, innocuous, almost foolish language. Like they were like a pair of clowns, you know, and they were waiting for Godot. So you could say to yourself, who is Godot? So that was my first encounter with Cathal. And after the play, we were all so excited about it that we went off to have supper in a late-night restaurant, and we talked until 2 in the morning about the meaning of Godot. And we came out of it, and I suddenly felt as if I had met my soul mate. So when we got to know each other a bit better, we got our great bond was the theatre. And every week he'd ring me and say, I have tickets for this, I have tickets for that. And I was engaged to be married at this stage to another guy, but he was in England teaching. And he, when he came home at Easter, I just took one look at him and said, my God, what can I have been thinking of? So that was the end of that. So I just mentioned it to Cathal when I rang him the next morning after we went back to work, and Cathal never forgot these words, and he kept reminding me down through the years that I just rang him up and says, hi, I think you'll be glad to hear number 1 has been eliminated. So there was no getting down on the knees and saying, I love you, I adore you, I lay my life before you. There was not that at all. There was a total acceptance. We had 50 years.